Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. I remember walking out of the theater after seeing The Last Jedi and thinking to myself, how is this possible that I, Alan, from Generation Tech, could dislike a Star Wars movie? Not just any Star Wars movie, not some anthology movie, but one of the main trilogy movies. How is it possible? And then there's the shock of the media calling fans like me who didn't enjoy The Last Jedi bigots and racists, when clearly I'm a specious, deaf to the dolphins and Xenos. It took quite a lot of soul searching back then to try to understand what was going on, but then The Rise of Skywalker came out and I realized that J.J. Abrams had phoned it in. And this time even the media critics agreed. This is when I came to a realization. You see, The Force Awakens was a pretty uninspired film, but it set up a new time period and world for us to explore in the Star Wars galaxy. And when you're a fan who hasn't seen a major Star Wars film since you were 10 years old, you'll take anything. I was suckered in by many of the unanswered questions the film posed, like who is Rey's father? Is Finn Force sensitive? Is Snoke really that big, and what's his deal? There was also that scene of Luke at the end of the film that pointed towards more future awesomeness, and there was also the likelihood of more Finn and Poe shenanigans. They were supposed to be the best Star Wars bromance since Anakin and Obi-Wan. But then Rian Johnson came along and he basically changed everything we knew about the sequel characters. Poe became a misogynist asshole, Finn got paired up with some randos, Luke becomes grumpy, and Snoke gets killed unceremoniously. Now granted, Rian Johnson is a talented filmmaker. Just watch Looper and Knives Out. I would even argue that The Last Jedi, from an objective cinematic reviewer's point of view, is the best film in a terrible trilogy. It has some truly epic Star Wars moments like the Holdo maneuver. Even Leia in space, as stupid and corny as some fans think it is, will be remembered. And so, as we all waited for the last film, we were assured by the studio that, well, there's a plan in all of this. There's no way Rian Johnson would just sabotage a trilogy in order to make his film stand out and be more awesome sauce than the other films. But that's exactly what happened. One man with an extremely strong ego decided that his middle act would outshine all of the other movies in the trilogy. It doesn't even matter if he ruins the continuity between all three of these films. And therefore all the groundwork J.J. Abrams laid out in the first film went to waste. And the third film, Rise of Skywalker, just became one giant dumpster fire attempt full of retconning and half-hearted attempts to make the entire trilogy make sense and have some sort of continuity. Look guys, the reality is that the sequel trilogy is only a small, tiny portion of the entire Star Wars library of lore. We will one day look back at this trilogy and remember when the world went mad with wokeness, and when a movie studio spent massive amounts of resources attacking fans for no reason. But the true damage the sequel trilogy really did was it took a lot of our old beloved characters, cameoed them in order to bring fans back, and then just unceremoniously ripped them away from us. And so today's video is dedicated to all those old characters we lost in this very terrible trilogy. Nien Nunb might not seem like a big deal for us humans, but amongst Solstans, he was somewhat of a legend. While we humans have Lando and Han Solo, the Solstans had Nien Nunb, arms dealer, smuggler, and rebellion hero, and playboy. He participated in the rescue of Alderaanian refugees after the destruction of Alderaan. Then he would link up with General Lando Calrissian and serve as his number 2 during the Battle of Endor. Together they would deliver the killing blow to the station, which would lead to the collapse of the entire Empire. Now, how does Nien Nunb die? Well, sometime around the New Republic era, Princess Leia's old diplomatic ship / blockade runner, the Tantive 4, was recovered and returned to the General Princess. Nien Nunb would captain the ship alongside his co-pilot Urkos Ferdum during the Battle of Exgol. When Palpatine released a massive load of Sith lightning into the air, it disabled the bulk of the Resistance fleet and also caused the Tantive 4 to explode, killing off the most famous Solstan to have ever lived. It might seem like Luke Skywalker single-handedly destroyed the Empire all by himself, but the reality is without the Rebel Alliance Navy and military force support, he would have never even stood a chance. And at the heart of the Rebel Alliance's military effort wasn't Mon Mothma or even Princess Leia. It was talking fishman Ghail Akbar, the Mon Calamari warrior and genius tactician. A veteran of the Clone Wars and the Mon Cala Civil War, Ghail Akbar would serve as one of the senior-most officers in the Rebel Alliance Navy. Without his support for the rebellion, the Mon Cala would have never supplied the Rebel Alliance Navy with a Mon Calamari Star Cruiser, the only capital ship in the galaxy at the time that could stand up against an Imperial-class Star Destroyer. It would be Gal Akbar and his keen sense for traps that ultimately led Rebel forces to victory during the Battle of Endor, one of the greatest military upsets in galactic history. Gal Akbar would retire from military service after the Battle of Jakku, but instead of retiring to a life of peace, Gal Akbar is drawn back into the fights when the First Order emerges out of the unknown region. He would return as the captain of the Raddus during the evacuation of Dakar. Unfortunately, during the battle, 2 First Order TIE fighters attacked the bridge of the Raddus with proton torpedoes, venting the entire bridge crew into space. Unlike Leia, Gal Akbar did not have the Force and could not just swim back into the ship through vacuum, and so he dies. In Legends, at least, Admiral Akbar would fight the Imperial Remnant and then also the Yuzhang Vong, a far more formidable and interesting enemy than some reskinned space Nazis, in my opinion. Temmin Snap Wexley wasn't exactly an old character. He was born during the Galactic Civil War period to Rebel pilot and hero Nora Wexley. In true Star Wars fashion, Snap was an excellent child soldier and participated in the last year of the war alongside his terrifying B-1 battle droid known as Mr. Bones. It was upgraded with all sorts of killer attachments. During the Battle of Jakku, Temmin would fly an X-Wing with Phantom Squadron. During the battle, he would even knock some TIE fighters off the tail of legendary pilot Wedge Antilles. Wedge Antilles would return the favor to Temmin one day by being his flight instructor when the young boy joins the New Republic Navy. Wedge would also become Temmin's stepdad after he marries his mom, Nora. When Poe Dameron joins the Resistance, Temmin would go along with them and become number 2 in command of Black Squadron. Temmin was known as one of the best recon flyers in the Resistance. It was thanks to him that the Resistance had any information on Starkiller Base before their attack. He had partaken in an extremely dangerous solo recon mission of the First Order base and had collected information about its defenses. Temmin Wexley would then help Poe Dameron destroy Starkiller Base shortly after. During the Battle of Exegol, Wexley would be a part of the Resistance first wave of fighters. They were severely outnumbered, and Wexley's X-Wing would lose control and slam into a Sith Eternal Star Destroyer. Han Solo was always my favorite character in Star Wars, and that's because he represented the true and wild spirit of the Star Wars galaxy. He wasn't some rigid Jedi or some politician. He was just an everyman trying to survive alongside his dog-like Wookiee friend. The roguish smuggler starts off relatively selfish and somewhat incompetent during the original trilogy, but slowly becomes more mature, more selfless, and with that came more responsibilities and titles. During the Battle of Endor, the street urchin from Corellia becomes a general in command of all ground forces on the forest moon of Endor. Now, Han Solo was supposed to continue growing. He was supposed to become a family man and settle down with Princess Leia. They were supposed to have twins, Jason and Jaina, and a young boy named Anakin. Han Solo was supposed to symbolize every young man's journey from being a degenerate to something a bit more respectful and positive. But what do the sequels do to Han Solo? Well, they make Han and Leia's relationship fall apart because both individuals are focused more on their work than their family. Han becomes a racing pilot and then eventually slips back into illicit freight shipping and becomes an absent father. By the time The Force Awakens starts, all Han Solo has is a broken home and his dog-like Wookiee pal, and of course his ungrateful emo son Kylo Ren. Han Solo dies as a plot mechanism to help Kylo Ren achieve his desired level of hate and darkness, and then silently falls into the unknown. A tragic ending for one of the best characters in all of Star Wars. What happens to Princess Leia in the new Sequel Trilogy isn't much better. She becomes a key figure in the New Republic government, but then an opposing political figure releases information to the public that her father was Darth Vader. This information surprisingly destroys her reputation in the New Republic. It's almost as if all of her great work, heroic efforts, and sacrifice were swept aside because she just happened to be the daughter of a baby-killing Sith war criminal. I mean, the princess sacrificed everything: a future as a powerful Jedi, a chance for happiness with her family and son. Princess Leia is the truest example of fine civil service, and even when the galaxy rejects her, she doesn't turn her back to the galaxy and establishes the resistance. But then shortly after the First Order War begins, she's sucked out into the vacuum along with Admiral Akbar and performs a spacewalk sans space suit. While she initially survives this incident, the damage her body has sustained was fatal. And so shortly after the evacuation of Dakar, Princess General Senator Leia Organa passes without fanfare or much of a point. The sequels didn't just ruin the two main characters from the original trilogy, they ruined all three, including the most important figure of them all, Luke Skywalker. Like Han Solo, Luke Skywalker also goes through an impressive character arc. He starts off as a wet behind the ears teenager living with moisture farmers on the most backwards planet in the galaxy, Tatooine. Luke Skywalker is whiny and a bit puny at this moment in time, but he has a good heart full of optimism. And as the story progresses, Luke's journey as a Jedi turns him into a much more mature and responsible individual. Like Han Solo, Luke becomes quite formidable before the end of the Galactic Civil War. He's a symbol of hope for all of the New Republic. But instead of successfully founding a new Jedi Order, Luke's new class of Jedi are crushed by his star pupil Kylo Ren, son of Han Solo and Leia. Instead of fighting back though, Luke just goes into exile and cuts himself off from the Force. This is the same Luke Skywalker who went up against Darth Vader with almost no training in the Force. This is the same Luke Skywalker who allows himself to be captured prior to the Battle of Endor in order to convince his father to join him on the light side. And now Disney is trying to convince us that having his temple destroyed by his emo nephew is enough to stop one of the greatest heroes in the galaxy. One could argue that this time it was different. It was Luke's fear and lack of trust in his nephew that served as a catalyst for these events. You could argue that Luke has lost trust in himself after this incident, and that is far more damning than anything else he's ever faced. But the reality is Disney has its own new agenda, and Rian Johnson lays it out very clearly with this clunky dialogue.
Let the past die. Kill it if you have to.
You see, Disney has inherited a franchise, one that it has no part in creating, one with legions of fans and a massive amount of existing lore. This is something that Disney could not control, and we know the mouse loves control. This is why they own basically every childhood memory you and I have had growing up, and will continue to try and monopolize all content created for children. Because behind all that magic and glitter, this is just another bloodthirsty corporation focused on one singular goal: more profits. Now, this would have all been forgotten had Disney showed that it has the skill and ability to actually make new and awesome Star Wars stories, but it clearly does not have those abilities. Had Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau not come along when they did, who knows what would have happened to Star Wars. So there you have it, guys. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. And as usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.